One. So, hello everyone. Welcome to our first Velero Office Hours. This is a place for folks in the community to join, ask us questions, and questions relating to how to use Velero or how to contribute to Velero, or any questions related to Velero that you would like to ask. This meeting is going to be this meeting is going to occur on every second and fourth Thursday of the month, and excited to get this started. So I see one person from the community joining, Jin Cheng. So welcome. And if Jin, do you have any questions that you would like to start us off with?
Actually, not. I saw you post on some kind of general topic under today's topic. I think that's. I'm still new to this community, so but I'm part of the data domain. Actually, data backup restore is not a surprise subject to me, but I think I definitely have some interest in this. Velero, how it play around. I think this was used in some of our kind of software product, right? But I think my background is mainly coming from data protection appliance perspective. So I want to see how this technology can be used in a kind of all-in-one solution from appliance perspective. This definitely brings some interesting idea. So I want to just kind of join this community, learn from you guys, and hear more about it. Yeah, thanks.
That's awesome. Welcome, and we'll be here to help out in any way we can to help you get started and stuff. So with that, let's get started with like the topics that we have lined up today. Considering that this is our first office hours, we wanted to start off with from the beginning, from the scratch, answering basic questions around what Velero is, how it works, and all the various capabilities that it has. Just like scratching the surface, but not diving too deep today. So let's start with like the first topic that we have on our agenda, like what is Velero? Velero is like or Velero is a tool to like back up and restore applications running in Kubernetes. By applications, I don't just mean like your app definitions, like your manifests, but also your persistent storage used by your applications. So this can be used for disaster recovery of your application, or to migrate your application across clusters. And then like now coming to how Velero does backup and restore. Velero has like two components. One is the CLI and the other is the server. The CLI is what runs on like a cluster admin's laptop, and the server is like a pod running in your Kubernetes cluster. The client and the server don't communicate with each other directly over like the network or something. So this is so Velero is like purpose built for Kubernetes, using Kubernetes constructs. So we make use of the Kubernetes constructs of CRDs, and the client and the server communicate with each other through CRDs. So if the client creates a CRD, then the server notices that and reconciles that CRD. So this is like a controller reconciliation loop that Velero runs. So there are like various different kinds of CRDs that Velero uses. like the backups are a CRD, the restores are a CRD. You can also create schedules, which is like running backups on a schedule. Then there is this thing called as a backup storage location, which is like a object store where the backups taken by Velero is persisted. So that's how Velero operates under the covers. Like when when the cluster admin wishes to back up a particular application, a backup resource is created in the cluster, and the Velero server pod, which is running in the cluster, notices that backup object being created and performs the necessary operations to back up that application. And there is, like I mentioned before, Velero not only backs up your application definitions, but also backs up the persistent storage that is used by your applications through volume snapshotting. Based on where your Kubernetes cluster is running, you may be using like one of the cloud providers as your volume provider, or you may be using some other storage provider. So Velero can leverage or can perform volume snapshotting native to your storage provider using volume snapshotter plugins, which is like a custom binary built specifically for that storage provider, which understands that storage provider APIs to perform volume snapshotting operations. If you're running in an environment where the volume provider either does not support volume snapshotting operations, or a Velero plugin to perform volume snapshotting operations in that environment if that plugin does not exist, we also have another integration with a tool called Rustic, which is like a file system level backup of a volume that you can use to back up your applications. With that, I'm going to stop and let you all ask questions based on whatever I have spoken till now.
Yeah, I may have some naive questions. Sorry if I kind of ask some obvious questions.
Oh, this is just for that. So there's
Yeah.
no naive questions or
Yeah,
no bad questions.
you just mentioned like you kind of back up the manifest of the Kubernetes cluster, and you mentioned Velero itself is running as a pod. So I would assume that it has its own manifest within the Kubernetes as well. So when you do a whole backup, are you also back up the manifests that belong to the Velero itself? Or those are being kind of unpurposely being kind of excluded? Is that some policy driven by the user?
So that's a good question. As a policy in Velero, we back up more, and we that way the users can exercise control over what they can restore. So we back up as much as possible during backup, and users can selectively restore whatever applications that they want to restore.
Okay, so which means user can kind of selectively not selecting Velero itself as a backup.
Yes, so the user can ignore Velero. This is totally in the hands of the user under their control. They can use label selectors or like backup only specific namespaces, etc. We in subsequent office hours we will be doing demos where this will become more clear. But the user has complete control over what they can back up and what they can restore. Velero offers various kinds of resource filtering that users can use to select what they want to back up. They can choose to back up the whole cluster. They can choose to back up only certain namespaces, etc.
Okay. So in the traditional backup, we have this kind of asset, right? The asset could be a VM or any of kind of file system snapshot we want to back up. And also we have a policy which define when and how frequent we want to do the backup or backup to where. So all of those probably leading towards the CRD you just mentioned, right? So basically, if I understand correctly, is the collection of the CRD, whether it could be a backup, restore, volume location for the backup, the combination or logic combination of those leading towards a specific customer backup asset and associated policy along with it. So that's kind of the mapping towards the real world. Is that correct? Kind of.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So the backup CRD has all the resource filtering capabilities or the fields for resource filtering. And like in terms of when you say assets, here the asset are like applications running in Kubernetes, and the users have control over what they can back up and when. In terms of policy and when things can be backed up, you can use Velero schedules or that will create backup objects on a schedule, which will effectively mean you're backing up on a schedule. Does that make sense?
Okay, I get it. Yeah. And also, right now, the default backup object can only be the object store, right? There's no kind of block storage or the file system can be used. Is that right?
Yeah. So right now for object storage, we support like any of the cloud providers storage like S3 or like the Azure Blob Store or the Google storage. We support any of those. And we also have a support, if you're not running in an environment like in a cloud provider environment, we also have MinIO, which is like an S3-like storage that you can set up, and Velero can basically talk to any S3-like storage to store and retrieve backups.
Okay. For the application level, right? We always worry about like application consistency. So each of those like legacy database, right? Like Oracle, SQL Server, they have its own hook, which allow you to query sync. So when those legacy application move into the Kubernetes running environment, do you expect those legacy application will still maintain those kind of application query sync hook so that Velero can call upon when they try to do some backup? Do you expect that model to be the similar as kind of legacy kind of application level data protection?
So the scenario that you mentioned is not only applicable to legacy applications, but also any sort of stateful application, right? You will want to support quiescing and unquiescing before and after a backup. So for that, we have this extension point called as backup hooks, which are basically like extension point where users can say, before running the backup of this particular pod, run this command in the container so that the database stops writing, and we can successfully snapshot the volume that the database is using. And once the backup is done, we can also have this post hook, which will unquiesce the database and letting the application make progress and do meaningful work because we have finished backing up the application. So we have the backup and backup hooks that you can use for quiesce and unquiesce during backup. We also newly introduced this concept of restore hooks, which lets you perform like custom actions or extend or customize the restore process, allowing users to run custom commands or custom programs during or after an application has been restored.
Okay. Yeah.
So for example, if you're backing up MySQL that is running in your Kubernetes cluster, you can like I'm not very familiar with MySQL backup scenario, but you can perform operations to make the application stop writing to MySQL.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when you are restoring, you need to do like a PG dump and then another extra step uh, to to restore the MySQL database. So that is where you can use restore hooks. So you would restore the pod and then make the pod and give the pod data and then let it continue.
Okay. Get it. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
And as a segue, I would like to mention that we have what we feel is like a exhaustive documentation on our website. It is velero.io. This is our landing page for everything Velero, where you can find all the latest blog posts and all that. And then we also have our documentation linked here.
Mm.
This search feature in our web page is really cool. So you can uh, make use of that. And this is where these are the hooks that I was talking about, the backup hooks, and then also the restore hooks.
Mm.
Um, and as coming to the previous or backing up a little bit to resource filtering, we also have a page on that, which lets you choose like gives you information about how to apply resource filtering on a per backup basis.
All right. Yeah. Mm.
Other questions? I see somebody else joined. Dilshan, hi, Dilshan, welcome.
Hi.
Would
So
you like to introduce yourself?
yeah, I'm Dilishan and I'm from Sri Lanka. So we were already using Velero and Neo as our backup strategies. So I was interested in joining.
Awesome. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask?
Yeah, I was interested with these backup hooks. So it's a part of that we were also concerned. So
Cool. So do you want me to like give you like an overview of what backup hooks are and or do you have anything specific that you want me to answer?
no, actually, I was listening to the previous stage where you explained the backup hooks and the restore part. Basically, we didn't apply that one, but for the stateful application, we do have some kind of scenarios that we need to consider that part. Yeah, we can look into that. Thanks.
Okay. Considering that there is interest in backup hooks, let me go a little bit deeper into backup hooks. Uh, there are like two backup hooks. One is pre-backup and a post-backup. Pre-backup hooks are like is where you would perform quiescing of your application. Um, and post-backup hooks is where you would perform the unquiescing of your applications. We can specify backup hooks as like annotations on pods. So for example, if I have like a stateful application running and I can annotate that pod with the necessary hooks, and Velero, when backing up that pod, will notice these annotations and perform the hook actions. And uh, based on, you can also control what you want Velero to do when there is an error, when there is a timeout, or any such scenarios. Similarly, for post hooks, you can also control, you can specify the hooks via annotation, or also you can make them, or you can specify them in like the specs of the backup itself. So let me show you what I mean by that. So when I'm looking at the backup spec, So this is, I'm looking at the API types, and this is, I'm looking at the backup API. And this is where we can specify hooks that that are to be run in the backup. So if you the annotation or specifying the hooks in the annotation is very convenient if your commands are like very straightforward and simple. But here, but if they are, in case you have very complex logic that are hard to specify in annotations, you can provide them in the backup spec as well. So these are the pre hooks, and these are the post hooks which follow this, which follow similar semantics. And we have similar formats for the restore hooks as well. Oh, this is again, actually, let me back up a little bit and talk about the new feature that we introduced in the 1.5 release of Velero, like the restore hooks. So considering we had backup hooks, but users weren't able to use Velero workflow end-to-end for restores. There was a missing extension point of a restore hook to allow users to run custom commands during or after a restore. So that kind of led to the requirement of supporting restore hooks into Velero. So these are like custom actions that can be run like for while performing restore operations. We currently support two kinds of restore hooks. One is a init container restore hooks or restore hook. What this hook does is it adds init containers to pods before the application can start. So if you have a database application, database, let's say, and you want to make sure that when you restore the database, the back from a backup, the data in which the data that was previously backed up is available before the database is up and running, you can specify this. You can use the init container restore hooks, which ensures that the init container can do the necessary setup before the application can start. So the init container restore hook can copy data or like unpack data so that the application can use it straight away once it starts. The other kind of restore hooks that we support is like exec restore hook, which is similar to the which is basically running commands inside a pod during a restore or after a restore. So these hooks can also be specified either via annotation or via the restore spec. So these are the annotations that we have that you can use to specify restore hooks, and the spec equivalent is also available in the API types here under hooks. So if you scroll down, you can see hooks here, and then you can either specify init container restore hooks, or you can provide exec, or you can specify exec restore hooks.
How does, sorry for a question, how does this compare to the original init container belong to the stateful application before? Take the Elasticsearch as an example, right? There's some init container which may set up some Java heap or whatever environmental things for the particular applications. I would imagine those init container will be part of the manifest, which was backup before. So this
Yes.
adding another layer to make sure before the actual kind of application specific things run before, this can be run as a even earlier configuration if needed.
Yes. So init containers for a pod is like you can specify more than one init container. So this is so if you look at this example here, we are adding 2 init containers into this pod that we will restore, right? So the init container restore hooks will be like will be amongst the first set of init containers that will run. And then once those are run, the rest of the pod can resume as is, which will include the init containers that were already part of the pod definition.
Okay, I see. So do we have also this kind of init container hooks in the backup or also, right?
No, so that's like a difference between the backup and restore. So when you're performing backup, which is the application is already running and has made some progress and has stored some state that you're intending to backup, at which point we want to run QS and unQS of the application. Having an init container there would not be useful because the init container runs when the pod starts for the first time. But here the pod has already started and has made some progress and stored some state.
Yeah, but my understanding would be those querying would be IO centric, right? Because you're gonna back up the stateful things. You worry more about the storage side, so you want to make sure storage is consistent. That's where
Yes.
you do the querying mainly. Yeah,
Yep.
I just kind of top of my head, is there anything else need to be done? Because the container would be a bigger hammer rather than just a hook which kind of acquires in the IO from the data perspective, right? Yeah, it's just my comment. Yeah.
Yeah, but without these hooks, your backups will just be crash consistent, which may not be enough for certain applications or for certain stateful applications. So that is where quiescing and unquiescing comes into picture. And other than quiescing and unquiescing before and after a backup, I can't think of anything else that you will have to do to like successfully back up a stateful application.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks.
Other questions?
Another question is the implementation of this kind of init container or the hooks is pretty much the same as it's pretty much the same as the kind of when you start the application where you added the init container as part of your YAM for the stateful application as well, right? It's just like the timing or the way it started is controlled by the Velero to trigger this as a first, and then stateful application will be the second, be the layer 2, right?
Yes, so for init containers, it is pretty straightforward. We just update the manifest to add this init container that the user requested. But for running exec hooks, we need to wait for the pod to be running so that we can like exec commands into we can exec into the container and run commands.
So if you say this exec hook need to be wait for the pod to be started before it's running, so does that means the pod's original init container has been running before, right? Before your exec C is running here. Is that right?
Yeah, so you can either use init restore hooks or exec restore hooks. But if you use both, then the init container would have run. But if you also need a certain command to be run, then you can specify an exec restore hook, which will to run a command inside a pod, the pod has to be running,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So that is where we wait for the pod to be running before attempting to run commands inside it.
Yeah. 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 Thanks. Yeah.
Sure.
Great.
Other questions you all may have? If there are no other questions, I will go a little deeper into the Rustic integration that I mentioned. So I mentioned that I previously mentioned that you can back up volumes used by your stateful applications when you're backing them up. And if you're running outside of a cloud provider environment, or if you're running in an environment where you don't have volume snapshotting capabilities, we have this integration with this tool called Rustic, which is a third-party tool for Velero, uh, which we integrate into Velero to perform file system level backups of volumes. What this enables is this is agnostic to any cloud provider and will work in any environment that um, you're running in. And the other thing this ensures is like your volume snapshots or your volume backups are portable cross-platform, which means you can back up volumes running in AWS and restore them into Azure using Rustic. So that is a capability that Rustic brings up, like enables or facilitates. Um, the installation of Rustic and integration of Rustic is all handled by Velero for you. All you have to do as a user is tell Velero that you want to use Rustic. I don't want to go too deep into how Rustic operates and how Velero uses this operation straight in today's episode, but this is definitely something we can dig deeper into in subsequent episodes of the office hours.
So this Rustic use case is that assume is that work on top of the object store, or is that only work on the volume?
So Rustic is just Rustic is basically an alternative to back up your persistent volumes. If you're not running in, let's say you're running in like your own volume provider environment, which does not support snapshot APIs or does not have a Velero plugin to perform volume snapshotting, you can use Rustic to perform file level backups of your volume itself. And these backups are stored in the backup storage location.
Okay. So for example, if I use the local volume, which happen to have does not have the snapshot capability, like local file system, right? This can be used to back up those into another persistent volume, which could have different function or provided by different vendors.
Yes. So this is basically performing like capturing the contents of your volume and storing it in the object store.
Okay.
I think that's a good segue to look at like the format of our backup that is stored in the object store. So we store like some metadata, and then also along with the tarball containing the backup. The metadata is basically information for Velero uh, to use while restoring, and also to show as fields of show information of what is in the backup. The backup is basically like the star.gz file that is stored in the object storage location. We have recently we recently introduced, I think 2 releases ago, versioning of file formats. This will allow us to kind of make progress without breaking, or to make changes without breaking older installations of Velero.
So basically, this is metadata of the.
Yes, there is metadata, and then there is also the manifests for the applications, like the YAML files. We store them as JSON. And then there is also like information about volume snapshots that were part of the backup and stuff. And if you were using Rustic, then the file system backup would also be stored in the object storage location alongside the backup.
So basically, it's a JSON file along with the tar, right? That's
yes.
In the top, kind of composed of one valid backup. Okay. And the yarn for the namespace inside of the Kubernetes is that like the plain text of this JSON file, or it's part of the GZ?
Can you ask that again? Sorry.
I think my question is for the manifest of the I think the manifest of the namespace or whatever stateful inside of it, that's the YARN file for those stateful is part of the GZ, right?
Yes. So that's all packaged into a tar.gz file.
Okay. And the JSON file, the backup.json does not reference to those YARN file.
Yeah, so this is the Velero-backup.json file is the the file containing the metadata, where we have the spec to indicate what was backed up, what was excluded, and then also if there are any volume backups, we list them here, so that when you say Velero backup get details or Velero backup describe details, you will find all this information.
Okay.
Without actually having to unpack the backup and inspect it manually.
Yeah. Basically, it's basically the file, the kind of the name of the backup, right? In the legacy world is like, this is my last week backup for this applications. It's just some kind of metadata related to that particular backup, when it was done, how it was done, timestamp of those, right? Yeah.
Yep. I just noticed that we did not put in or write in answers into the HackMD to the questions that we answered. So that is something that I might do it after wrapping up here.
I can also do that. You've put in all the effort to answer the questions. I can write them up.
Questions?
Can you talk about a little bit kind of the ecosystem, like besides Velero, what are the kind of similar type of kind of project or product in the same kind of domain area?
Sure. So backup and restore has been something that's come up quite a bit over the past year or so, and for that, the Kubernetes upstream community has started this working group called Data Protection Working Group, basically trying to standardize standardize the kind of things that we've built into Velero. And we are hooked in there as well. We are trying to help people adopt the Velero features or gather learnings from Velero and uh, make it as part of an upstream or a fully upstream built solution. That is still in kind of early stages at the moment. So that is something that is happening. Other than that, there are other paid backup and recovery solutions. One that comes to mind is Kasten. Yeah, that I think they have two parts. I'm not, I don't remember those things very well, but that is like a paid subscription that you can use or you can purchase to back up and restore Kubernetes applications. For Velero, ours is fully open source. You can open issues requesting for features, reporting bugs. You can also open pull requests to contribute to Velero. Let me show you our all our code is on GitHub. So this is our main repository where we have issues and pull requests. And we also have this page that is all the adopters of Velero or all the various solutions that are using Velero as part of their backup and recovery solution. So we have all these people who are using Velero in their products. We also have an open governance model, which means that all the decisions that we take are in the open, are discussed in the open, and the roadmap is also something that is part of the discussion that we make it a point to have discussed more in the open. We also have this support process where you can ask questions either in the Slack channel or our community meetings or our latest office hours. So this is our office hours and this is our community meetings. You can also email questions to our Google group. So that is mostly that. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah. I think you pointed out quite some information. Yeah. Thanks.
Cool. I think the other thing that I would like to mention is like the resources tab on our website, which has links to our community meetings playlist on YouTube, and also like the deep demos and deep dives that we have done. We also have like various talks featured from KubeCon. Carlisia, who's one of our maintainers, has done various interviews with like Newsstack and other on and on a few other YouTube shows and other podcasts that have featured Velero and that we feel are informative, and that is all. Those are all linked here, and you can check them out. And there are also a few blog posts that you would like if you would like to read, like how to back up certain kinds of applications or like gotchas, backing up certain thing, certain storage environments, etc. So I would strongly encourage you to check these out as well. And just as a note, all these office hours will also be available on YouTube for folks to watch later.
Yeah, thanks.
So I think we are 8 minutes to the top of the hour. If there are no other questions, I think this is a good stopping point. And if you have suggestions on what you would like to cover for the next office hours, come with questions or tell us beforehand. That way we can we will be in a we will be able to help you better instead of trying to investigate on hand. So I think with that, I'm going to stop my recording. And before I do that, thank you all for attending or watching this later. If you are watching this on YouTube, be sure to check out our community page if you want to attend a future office hours or our community meetings. You can also join the Google group for updates about our releases and all announcements related to Velero. And also be sure to follow us on Twitter, which is where we will post again, new releases, exciting announcements, etc. So with that, I will stop this recording and